Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Journey Forward with Jory Rose. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I've been working on, something that I'm really proud of and excited to be offering to you guys, which is an upcoming online course in which I will be guiding you weekly through the steps to journey forward. But this isn't really a sales pitch about my course. This is really to help you understand why the journey forward is so important to me and why it is that I am such a huge believer in all the tools that I teach. So if you've been listening to the podcast since the beginning, you will likely know a lot of these stories. But I really wanted to compile my entire life, but put it into a story arc for you guys to help you really get to know me a little bit better, so you can gain greater understanding of just why I'm so passionate about why I do what I do and why I am such a firm believer in the tools that I teach. Because at the bottom line, I don't teach anything that I don't live on a daily basis. And I know that I can nowhere have been through all the experiences that all of you have had in all of our unique ways that we've been living our lives. But I can tell you this. My story is mine, and while I am unique, my problems are not. And I know that I am not the only one who has ever felt stuck, who has felt insecure, who has felt unsure of myself, who has been in habits and patterns that I didn't think I knew how to change, that didn't believe in myself, and ultimately how I learned to let all that go. And so the common humanity of our human experience, and while all of our stories are unique, but at the core of it, what we share, what we have in common, what is universal is our emotional experiences. And so I wanted to tell you more about myself so you can really understand why it is that I am just so passionate in helping others get unstuck. And I know that the term getting unstuck feels really broad because it is. Because I am not willing to niche myself down to just one particular area. Because oftentimes we have multiple areas in our lives in which we're stuck. And the truth is, wherever you're stuck, I really believe the tools are the same. And in over my 20 years of my career, that has gone from working in schools, working with kids, working with parents, having worked at a high school, worked at independent private schools, having private practice in my own. I have worked quite the gamut, and over the years have spoken at countless conferences and been presenters and have worked in corporate settings, all teaching the same tools in what I believe is a fundamental path to getting unstuck, which is the practical application of a mindfulness practice. And there's a lot more to it than just mindfulness. And that's what the Journey Forward method is all about. I've taken all these tools from noticing the patterns that I have seen over the past 20 years, coupled with my own story, my own life, the lives I see of those clients that I work intimately with, and put it together in a format that I think is going to help you create long-term lasting change. But this is really about me wanting to share my journey with you. So like I said, if you've listened to the podcast since the beginning, I've dedicated single episodes to a lot of this story. In fact, if you go back to like episodes 1 through, I don't know, maybe 15, the majority of those are just my story, my journey, where I go more in depth. So this is going to be the abridged version, but nonetheless, this is my story. So thank you guys for tuning in today so you can hear it. And I hope that as I share it, you are able to notice and pinpoint and identify with what resonates with you. Because like I said, while I am unique, my problems are not. And I know that my experience is not mine alone. And that's partly what I bring to myself in my work is my own experience so that I can connect with you on a human level, on a vulnerable level, to let you see that I get you, I understand you, I see you, and I can validate what you're feeling. Because I am not just sympathetic, I am empathetic to it. I intimately know that feeling inside my body, inside my mind, of feeling like I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. So when I was growing up, there was a lot of family trauma, especially transgenerational trauma, that I was born into. You've probably heard me talk about my mom's parents were killed in a car accident when my mom was 16, and that trauma very much informed her own parenting and my understanding of the world, that the world was not safe. The world was a scary place. This was my primal world belief. If you listened to the episode a few weeks ago on beliefs, that was my primal world belief, was that the world was a scary place. And then you add in my own experience of my own childhood. My parents divorced when I was about 3. And when I was 10, my dad committed suicide. So that really continued to validate that thought that I had. The world's a scary place. Bad things happen to good people. And what I really internalized was a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. And for me, to squelch that fear and anxiety, I wanted to create a life that was known, that I felt secure, that I felt safe, that it was predictable. Because I believed that abandonment happened, that people left. And so in an effort to not have that fear of abandonment manifest, I became very dependent. I became dependent on my mom growing up, so much so that I couldn't even sleep over friends' houses. I would get so homesick. And I think my mom liked having me around. And so she never really encouraged me or gave me the tools on what to do when I felt homesick. She would just come pick me up. And I know that's probably what I really needed in the moment. I probably would not have listened to the tools that she would have given me. I would have just cried and had her come and get me. So I can't fault her for that. I know it's what I needed, but it did not serve me long term. And when I was 13 and started dating my ex-husband, I transferred all that dependency from her onto him. And what that turned into for me was it prevented me, and this again was by choice, but I was operating out of such fear and anxiety. I was holding and grasping and clinging so tightly to what was known and comfortable that I did not go through that very natural and important stage that most teenagers go through of individuation and separation from our family of origin. Because that's the stage in our teenage years in which we begin to step back from where we came from, to get really curious, to rebel, to learn about ourselves, to screw up so we can make mistakes, so we can learn our lessons. And I never really did that. I wanted to keep a life that was really safe, that was really secure, that kept me in the known. Because for me, the unknown was my biggest fear. Aside from elevators, I have a big fear of elevators and I still do today. But the unknown is what gave me anxiety. The unknown is what kept me up at night. And while I felt very dependent, there were certain parts of my life that at the same time, I was also very, one might call stubborn, I would say determined, that I really had a strong sense of self. So I still had this paradox inside of me. And I remember, one of the things that, if I look back and I recall, one of the first things in which I became really determined about was losing weight. In high school and in the beginning of college, I was pretty overweight for my height, and I definitely needed to lose the weight. And I recall this was the first time that I enacted a mindset shift. A mindset that went from I can't do that to it's possible. So while I still had a lot of fear of the unknown and I still was really dependent and I still didn't have this strong sense of self, I did have this underlying sense of confidence, determination. And my mindset was, even at 18 years old, I had told myself I didn't want to wait to get married to go on my wedding diet. That was my mindset, which I look back now, 25 years later, and think, that's kind of exactly what I'm teaching my clients now. Don't wait for some arbitrary date or time in your life to create the change that you really want to create. If you know you need to create change, why wait? What better time is there than right now? Because I also knew if I had that deadline of a wedding to try to lose weight, the pressure on myself would be so high. But I also knew I would feel happier. I would feel more confident. I would be more at ease to be more active, to be able to be more comfortable in my own skin. Why should I have had to wait for that? So again, this paradox inside of me that was quite determined and knew exactly what I wanted, but yet that didn't transfer over into all areas of my life. And what ended up happening was I really cultivated my perfect life. I got married. I had 2 daughters. I always wanted 2 daughters. I was able to be a stay-at-home mom. There's nothing else I wanted more. And I literally got all of that. But I also was doing what was next, because I also was wanting to create safety and security to fight off against the unknown, because that still, fear of the unknown gave me a ton of anxiety. And then one day, as I'm sure you've heard me say, I woke up in my early 30s and was like, wait a second, who am I? Who am I outside of my role of wife and mom? How did I get here? And I was happy, but this deeper inkling inside of me was I was not fulfilled. And I think it was because at that point, I had never given myself the opportunity to individuate, to separate, to figure out who I was on my own. And what we started off as this little gnawing feeling became a bigger and bigger scratch and an itch. And it was finally something I just couldn't ignore. But I didn't know what to do. There's no rule book to say how to figure yourself out, how to get unstuck, how to create an identity when I've never really had an individual identity. And there was a series of serendipitous events. I mean, that's a whole other conversation of all of the serendipities and all of the signs of the universe that woke me up. But at the very root of it was my own awareness. And I became really open. And in fact, I embodied an open-hearted posture every morning saying, universe, guide me, give me the signs, put everything that I need to be on my path in front of me, whether it's experiences, opportunity, or people to put me on the path that I'm supposed to be on. Well, once I started opening myself up to the signs, the universe delivered. And two of the biggest ones that were major pieces of my story, and at the time, really integral parts of my own awareness and spirituality and parts of my path, was I had a light that went on by itself. And this light went on at a very significant time in which I had just identified with my therapist that I was afraid my light was going out. I was afraid that this light, this energy that had always been a part of me and had been a theme in my life, was starting to dim. And I was really afraid of losing my light. And literally the night after I acknowledged that, I had a light go on in the middle of the night. And guess what? I couldn't turn the light off. Like literally, every time I would turn the light off, it went back on. And this happened for about 7 weeks. And it became this big sign from the universe telling me, okay, Jory, your light is not going out. And then one day it did go out, and I thought that was it. And I was devastated. And I thought, now that my light went out, I don't know who I am again. And just as soon as my light went out, within literally the very next day, because I know exactly when this was, it was my 33rd birthday. And I started seeing the number 33 everywhere. And it wasn't until 8 months later of my 33rd birthday that I began to actually know and understand what the number 33 meant. And 33 is a very significant number in numerology. 33 is completion upon one phase and initiation into another. 33 represents higher level consciousness. 33 is actually the age that Jesus was when he died and resurrected. So there's a lot of spiritual, religious, sociocultural context and meaning around the number 33. Right around that same time period in my life, within a couple of years, I also discovered mindfulness. Well, actually, mindfulness found me. And I delved deep into the practice, both personally and professionally. I was searching for some tools, for some guidance, for some framework to help me slow down, get out of my head where I was ruminating, I was spinning, I was anxious, I was fearful, I was confused, and ultimately I was stuck. And what mindfulness did for me is it got me to slow down. For the first time ever, I wasn't racing to what was next. I learned to slow down. I learned to breathe. I learned to get out of my head, to not identify all my thoughts as truth, to see them as just merely thoughts. And most importantly, I learned to embody my emotions. I learned to trust my intuition. I learned to get and stay really present. And when I was able to slow down, to breathe, to get out of my head, to stay present, ironically, the very thing that I was trying the most to prevent from happening, which was, I was so afraid of the unknown. I was holding on to this fear and anxiety. And when I just sat with it and when I looked at it and when I faced it, it didn't have the same power over me. And I began to shift. I began to learn who I was for the first time in my life in my early 30s. And yet, I still had a lot of self-doubt. I still had a lot of fear of the unknown. But I continued with this mindfulness journey. And in the summer of 2013, through again another series of serendipitous events, I was on a retreat at the Omega Institute in upstate New York with Dan Millman, who is the author of The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And this was a weekend retreat to cultivate a peaceful, compassionate heart and to step into your warrior spirit. So Friday and Saturday of the weekend was all about cultivating the peaceful, compassionate heart. And Sunday, we stepped into that warrior spirit. He started off guiding us in a martial arts practice. And then we were doing this martial arts routine to Lionel Richie. And I just thought, how the hell did I get here? Here I am on a Sunday morning in July in upstate New York, doing a martial arts routine to Lionel Richie with Dan Millman. Like, it just felt like this out-of-body experience. And then he guided us in a very powerful exercise. He divided us into groups of 3. And one person was to walk towards another person as if they were our long lost friend, someone you hadn't seen in a long time that you were so anxious to get to go and embrace. Person number 3 in your group, as you were walking towards this other person, when you would get halfway there, would throw their arm out, blocking you in your pathway, preventing you from reaching this other person. The person who stuck out their arm represented self-doubt. And the meaning of this exercise was to demonstrate how self-doubt gets us in the way of where we want to go, gets us in the way of us reaching our goals, of getting to our destination. So we had to go through this exercise a total of 9 times, where each of us played each role 3 separate times. So if I'm walking towards my long lost friend, the first time I walk on the approach, self-doubt throws its arm out, blocks me, prevents me from getting there. I go back to my starting point. I try again to walk towards my goal. And once again, self-doubt throws its arm out, blocking me, preventing me, and keeping me stuck. I once again go back to the beginning point. The 3rd time, self-doubt throws its arm in front of me, blocking me on my path, and I gain the courage and the confidence, and I push past self-doubt, and I continue to walk towards my goal and embrace my long lost friend on the other side of the room. So we each got to play each of those roles 3 times to see what it felt like to be self-doubt, to keep us stuck, what it felt like to have self-doubt stop us, and what it felt like to be the destination that no one could easily reach. That in and of itself was a really powerful exercise. And then came my most life-changing moment. After this, Dan Millman then assembled 2 cement blocks with a purple meditation cushion sitting in between them and a plastic interlocking board across the top. And the plastic interlocking board represented a real piece of wood that you would break if you were doing a martial arts exercise of breaking a board. And there were actually 3 different setups here because there were 3 different boards. One that was the weight of a real piece of wood, one lighter and one heavier. He assembles this and he says to the group, there are about 65 people, he says, "What's the goal?" And we just said, "Well, duh, you just told us the goal is to break the board." And he said, "No, the goal is to hit the purple meditation cushion that is underneath the board. The board is simply in your way." He said, "The cushion represents your dreams and your goals, and the board represents self-doubt." Well, as soon as he told us that our goal was to hit the cushion, but when he said that we had to break a board, the very first thought that came into my mind, I can't fucking break a board. And then I was amazed. Oh my God, there it was. Self-doubt immediately was present. So when it was my turn to go, I chose to pick the middle board, the one that was the weight of the real piece of wood. And I'm kneeling on one knee. I'm looking up at Dan Millman. He's guiding me on what to do. I'm focusing on that board. All the while, the message in my mind is, I can't do this. Sure enough, I raise my hand up, I bring my arm down, and I don't break the board. And then I was confirmed. Self-doubt was right. I couldn't do it, and I didn't do it. Well, I was totally ashamed. I was totally embarrassed. And I was only about one of 6 people out of a group of 65 that did not break the board. So when everyone was done, he says, "Raise your hand." And I very embarrassingly and shamefully raised my hand. He said, "Okay, I'm going to give you one more chance." I now had to decide if I was going to choose the same board, if I was going to go for the easier and lighter one. Well, I already told you I can be determined and stubborn, so I was not going to go for the easy board, and I picked the same one. So I gather my courage, and at this point, self-doubt is really loud because it wasn't just a hypothesis that I couldn't do it. Self-doubt had now confirmed I couldn't break the board, so it wasn't just a fear, it was a reality. So I had to fight really hard against that thought that became my truth. And I kneel down in front of Dan Millman again. I'm looking up at him and he's guiding me in what to do. I also hit it with the wrong part of my hand, so I became more mindful of where on the side of my palm to actually hit it. But something inside of me shifted. The first time I was up there, my entire energetic and literal focus and gaze was on the board. But this second time, what shifted in me was I was able to change that focus of attention. I shifted my gaze and my energy. And instead of focusing on the board, I turned all of that energy to the cushion. That I was truly able to see that my goal was to hit the cushion and the board was simply in my way. So I took a few deep breaths. I raised my hand up. I practiced a little bit of coming down in the spot I wanted to hit. And when I was ready, I put my hand up. Dan Millman says to me, "When you do it, that's when you do it." And I came down and I broke through that board. And that was the single most life-defining moment in which I no longer could let self-doubt take over. I no longer could allow fear and anxiety to be the thing that prevented me from where I wanted to go. I no longer could let that narrative ring true because it no longer was true. I had allowed my narrative, my story of I can't do this, I'm too afraid, the unknown is scary, I'm not strong enough, I'm not independent, I don't know who I am. I let all of those belief systems keep me really stuck. And in that moment, I was free because I had pushed past self-doubt. I had pushed past my biggest fears. I had pushed past all of my anxiety because I got past the belief system that I couldn't do something. And I knew my life was forever changed. I knew I could no longer allow that narrative to keep me stuck. Now, I will say this. There are many people, and this isn't a judgment, this is a pure observation, who could have that life-changing moment and simply go back to their everyday routine. But as I always say, you can't change what you're not aware of. And with awareness comes responsibility. Because now that you're aware, I believe you have the responsibility to do something about it. So I did not change everything overnight, but that was my catalyst moment. But that wasn't the only one. Around that same time period, I had attended a conference for women in which I was introduced to an opportunity to shift my mindset. That I could label my anxiety as fear, or I could simply label anxiety as energy moving through my body. And if I labeled it as energy, I could decide what I wanted that energy to do for me. And what I wanted that energy to do for me was to shift away from the fear that the unknown was scary. Because here was the reality of my life at this time. I had the known and I had the unknown. And I always believed the unknown was far worse than the known. But the truth was, I had the known in which I wasn't happy and I wasn't fulfilled and I was still stuck. So when I had this awareness, I recognized, wait a second, the unknown is awesome because that is where the possibility resided. For me, to push past the self-doubt, continue to not let that narrative hold me back, and to actually cultivate a life in which I was in alignment, in which after all this work in my journey of self-discovery and of meditation and of mindfulness and in going back in my career and figuring out in my 30s for the very first time in my whole life who I was outside of my roles, outside of my family story, outside of the traumas, outside of my dependence on others. I'm not saying any of this was easy. This was painful. And as my therapist had said to me at one point, birth is painful and so is rebirth. But I was actually able to allow the truth to be possible, that my inner wisdom could guide me. Because I also know I had had years worth of inklings inside of me of that wisdom, of that intuition, wanting to be heard. But I allowed it to push down by my thoughts, by logic, by reason, by rationality. And that cognitive dissonance kept me up in my head and cut off from the neck down. And that no longer served me because that inner wisdom was my inner truth. And so in this journey of mine, by no means was it a straight line. There were tons of twists and curves and hardships and pain. And I was able to get unstuck. And my awareness is what got me there. I was able to shift my mindset. I was learning to be open to possibility. I trusted in the universe. I literally would look up at the heavens and the stars and say, give me a sign. And when I was open to it, I was able to receive it. I had to tune into practices that I would practice daily. Loving kindness practice shifted me so intensely. And I would start off every morning with a loving kindness practice. May I be healthy and strong. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. And those words would ground me and they would offer me compassion and love and the well wishes that I needed. But ultimately, those weren't the words that I most needed to hear. So I had to ask myself, what do I most need? That even if someone was able to offer to me, if I didn't believe it in myself, I wouldn't be able to receive it. So I came to the words of, may I be strong. May I be confident. May I be capable. May I be happy and fulfilled. Because the truth is, if you don't give to yourself what you most need, you could have someone give it to you, but you're not going to be able to receive it unless you believe it for yourself. So my loving kindness practice was a huge integral piece of getting and staying unstuck. Heart opening every morning, opening up my heart, shifting into a posture in which I literally was in a receiving position and asking for what it was that I wanted to receive. My ability to learn how to breathe. I was on a retreat and I literally, for the first time in my life, learned how to breathe, because what I was recognizing, I took a lot in, but I did not let a lot go. I did not know how to exhale. No wonder I was so tense. No wonder I was so stuck. I wasn't releasing what was no longer serving me. I learned how to slow down, because I was rushing through life trying to get to that safety and security that, ironically, no matter how quickly I tried to get to the next step, I never felt more safe or more secure because I wasn't in alignment with myself. I was still stuck. So I share with you my journey because I know that growth and change is possible. I know that you can cultivate a meditation practice, even if it's for 30 seconds a day, in a way that can begin to slow you down, get you to breathe, get you out of your head and get you into your body. I know that mindfulness works. The ability to have awareness, to even notice your thoughts as they arise and name them. Oh, these are just thoughts. To notice emotions without being afraid of feeling them. Because the irony is, the more you feel them, the less power they have over you and the quicker they dissipate. The mindfulness taught me to slow down and be present, to not be holding on to the past or those happy moments, and to not be so fearful and anxiety of the unknown, that this present moment was all that I had. And the awareness that I was able and capable of shifting my mindset from believing fear and anxiety is who I am, the mindset to let go of believing that the unknown was scary, but rather it was full of possibility. And as I broke that board that day, to let go of the belief that I can't do hard things, that I wasn't capable. Because the truth is, ever since then, I have met and exceeded and manifested every goal I've set out to do. Because once I believed in myself, look out, there is no stopping me. I have on the top of my computer a sticker that says, she believed she could and she did. And believe me, that was not always who I was, but it is now. And so I always tell my clients, I will hold the space for you that you can make the change that you need. I will hold the space for you that growth and change is possible. I will hold the space for you to be able to break that board, to push past self-doubt. We just got to get you the tools to get you there. Because if I can do it, I promise you, anyone can do it. And this is what I am so passionate about guiding others in. And I have begun on a journey very recently in which I am shifting my entire business model so I can help more people. And that is the Journey Forward method. And so I am starting a live program Thursday, May 6th. The link is in the show notes. If you would like to join me, this is the only time that this course will ever be offered at this price. And oh my God, I'm throwing in so many amazing bonuses. The bonuses itself are like 4 times the cost of the value of the course. The value of these bonuses are incredible. I've created new mini meditation course, a new mini mindfulness course. I've got a gratitude meditation model that goes along with my book, A Year of Gratitude. You get a total of 1.5 hours of coaching with me, all thrown in addition to an amazing community of people who are ready to make the change. Because here's what I know for certain. As we begin to emerge into our post-COVID world, now is the time to create the change you've always wanted to make. There is no normal we're going back to. You got to create it. So what better time is there than now to wait for the changes that you didn't want to have to wait forever for, but to make those changes now? The waiting is over. Just like I said to myself when I was 19, I don't want to have to wait for me to get married to go on a wedding diet. Why wait for some arbitrary time when you realize you're unstuck? Now is the best time to make that change. So I hope that I've inspired you. I hope that you've been able to see just how powerful my own journey has been. And honestly, if I can do it, you can do it. And I really would love for you to be part of the Journey Forward community. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. If this speaks to you, I'd love to have you comment, send me a message through Instagram or through Facebook. You can always reach out to me via my website, joryrose.com. If this episode was meaningful to you, help me spread the word. Give it a rating, a review. This is the way that we can help more people to journey forward, because I know so many people are stuck. And part of what keeps them so stuck is the belief that they don't know how to get unstuck. And I am ready to help you let that narrative go, because it's just simply not true. So thanks so much for tuning in today. And I hope that you are doing well. And I hope that you can begin to sit with and be curious about some of your own narratives that you're ready to let go of. I'll see you next week.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.